part of it. I mentioned before, my son got an email from his teacher before we even started this work a couple days ago, just saying how sorry he was for the kids, and how much he appreciated them, and that wanted to be there for them, and wanted to be there for them. If they need anything, they could reach out to him. And as I said before, this is not, you don't have to do this. This is not contractual. This is about human beings really caring about each other, and Rocklin residents stepping up. And I think you see that strongly in our teacher workforce, and just want to say that, that it is deeply appreciated by all of us here tonight, and by the community at large. And it goes beyond that. So it's our incredible coaches and our deputy superintendent, our ed services leadership who did a lot of work around the clock over the weekend, writing these modules, thinking about this, trying to put good information in front of our teachers to help them get ready for this moment. We have served, I think, 400 or 500 meals today to kids in need, and our service providers are out there doing incredible work. We have buses going, we have janitors cleaning our schools. I mean, people are working. They are making sure that in these incredibly difficult times, we are serving our community. And in these incredibly difficult times, there's lots to be proud of, and there's moments where we can really see this and feel this. And so I think the one thing that we know in these uncertain times, that we can be certain it's going to be uncertain. We just don't know what to expect going forward. And I do want to sort of say that to the community as we think about this. We can think about this in chunks, if you will. And so for me, I think about this between now and the end of spring break as sort of one chunk. And we have some idea now what's going to happen. We have some information out for students to begin to think about how to deal with this. But that is the beginning, right? And so, and we will then sort of figure out. And what I would say is during this interim period, parents got information from their teacher today about how to engage and how to engage in their kids' education. I think it's really important, though, to understand as part of that there's a lot going on in our community, in our country right now. And we want to make sure we are there for you. We're flexibly offering you the information you need. If you want to teach your kids at home, we have good information to help you think about how to do it. If you want to engage with your teachers, we're making sure you can do that. But at the end of the day, over the next few weeks, if you just need to be with your kids, and you don't need to prioritize that right now because you want to prioritize the social, emotional health of your children or yourself, that's okay too. We're not going to be assessing over the next couple weeks. We're not going to be putting this in the grade. We're not going to be putting this in your transcript. This is a moment for you to do, and we recognize that. So we want to be there for you if you need us, but we also want to recognize that you need to take care of your communities and yourselves as well, and your families as well. And then as we move beyond that, as we think about when we get back from spring break, then we have something to think about as well. The governor said he thinks it's likely we could be out of school till the end of the summer, till summer. It's possible. The reality is he doesn't know, we don't know. And we're going to do the best we can, but what I can say is that we are trying to stay a step ahead. As the teachers do incredible work today, thinking about lessons today and tomorrow, our central office folks are thinking about what comes next, thinking about when that happens, we've got some good information out there, but how do we make sure learning's happening? How do we help kids along? If things are not going well, how do we understand that if kids are struggling? We have a lot of talk about equity in this district. The kids who are farthest behind, the kids from poverty who are struggling the most, we've got to make sure we know whether or not they're being successful, and we give extra help to them. So that work is going on now. We're thinking about that. And the final thing I'd say as we think about these segments is there also then becomes a lot of unknowns, and they're unknowns for all of us. And so I will say from a personal level, on behalf of me and Trustee Counter, we have senior students. Three of us have senior students, right? And so it's not as a board president, it's as a father. Like I understand the angst around what about graduation, and what about senior ball, and what about matriculation. These are real world. And the thing I think we're finding in these days is that school is more than just a place to gather. It really is our community. And these are meaningful moments in a child's life that are that may get missed because of this. And so what I'll say is, I don't have an answer for you tonight. We don't know what happens with graduation. We don't know but what I can say is we are thinking about it. We're purposely trying to understand that. And we're making sure we think about the human cost of making sure if we can't do something, that we think about what that means to kids or to teachers or to adults, and figure out any way we can to replace and have those moments going forward. And together, I think that there's lots of reason to believe, even in these incredibly difficult times, we're making some good progress as a community and as a city. And I know, and not to be cliche, but I'm pretty RUSD proud of the work that's going on. And I want to thank the teachers, the classified staff, the administrators, and I should say too that I didn't say enough about the principals and the incredible job they've been doing too. So across the board, we have a lot to be proud of, and I appreciate it. So with that, Superintendent Stock.
Thank you, President Miller, trustees. Before I go into the formal part of the report, I just do want to just share that I am amazed at the response by our colleagues, and as you've mentioned, teachers, nutrition services, custodians, principals, and district office colleagues, that while they're not just working on behalf of families, they're also grappling in their own way, in their own personal lives with being, worried about an elderly parent or their own kids, and even for some of our families, how they're going to get all the bills paid because they're worried about, frankly, the economy in their own household. And I know that, I'm worried about two of my adult kids in LA and San Luis Obispo, and and making sure that my father in Stockton gets food. And so what is amazing is the response you described is going on by our colleagues, our employees, as they themselves are grappling with things personally. And that actually makes me so proud to be the superintendent here, and really shows just that we do have the best people working on behalf of kids in Rocklin. I also want to acknowledge my deep appreciation for the collaboration with our labor partners, RTPA and CSCA. This has been ongoing and extremely critical in helping us successfully navigate these unprecedented times to this point, and it will be even more critical as we move in the days, weeks, and months ahead and navigate this in a truly collaborative way. And so with that, I'm going to ask Dr. Pond to come up and pull up the PowerPoint that will begin our formal overview. And as we do that tonight, you'll be hearing from various members of the district office around some of the work representing that their colleagues have been performing and to update the board on COVID-19. So at this point, you'll see that we're going to talk about the fact that there is this public health crisis. Our Placer County public health officer and California governor officials have provided guidance, and they've helped us in the actions that we're taking. And these include social distancing measures to slow the spread of the virus in our county and in our schools, and that we have, as the community is quite aware, have closed schools through spring break at this time, which is April 13th, and we'll be monitoring the situation. And we really, that flexibility is so critical to all of us as we know events are changing. So a quick overview. Tonight we're going to talk about the things we're doing to keep people safe, how we're developing the continuity of learning and essential services for our students, that communication piece, and then can't emphasize enough these key words of flexibility, adaptability, and creativity, and that assumption of positive intent are going to be critical for us to continue the successful navigation of these unprecedented times. And with that, I'm going to invite Kathy Pond, Deputy Superintendent of Ed Services, to talk about the continuity of learning.
Let's try it again. Good evening, President Miller and trustees and Superintendent Stock. We have a few links up there, but the message is that the distance and remote learning has begun, and we did work very hard. We had a group of not only our instructional coaches, but we had probably upwards of 25 teachers who are also working. We began a little bit in anticipation last Thursday, worked through the weekend, and what you see, if it's going to click. Is it going to click? It's not clicking on that one. So I have the PowerPoint on my screen, but it's not on that screen. So we did a module, and like everything, there's so many different tools that we could be using, and so we tried to focus on our what are the things, the essentials that teachers really needed without totally overwhelming people. But we did start with some online platforms. Elementary really was leaning towards Google and Seesaw, and then secondary leaning towards the the Schoology platform. But then we messed with some distance learning tools. Google Meet and Zoom were ones that staff really seemed to want to use, and Screencastify. So we did a survey at the end of the day, and I just wanted to share that 90% of elementary and 98% of secondary teachers did tell us they were expecting to push this content out from their own homes, because they do have the option to come in while we're able to in this county. And about 45% of elementary and 39% of secondary plan to use the Google Meet or Zoom, some sort of distance learning, so there could be some sort of interaction. 94% of elementary and 99% of secondary were comfortable with those platforms, so that was really positive. We know that we're going to try to support them as we go on, and I'll show you a couple other links. Will my links work? Huh? I wanted to show you some examples of remote learning. Let's see if we can get it up. See, it's not coming up there. Good. This was the highlight of my part of the presentation. I wanted to show you.
And the technology's working so well tonight.
There it is.
Okay.
So this is, thank you. This is an example, this is one teacher at Rocklin, and she had pushed out different kinds of assignments, traditional assignments, as well as at the end, I loved, she said, math, you're going to need paper to work these problems, but I'm working on a teaching video for the current chapter, so stay tuned. I love that. The teachers, as the ones that we interacted with, were really talking about, we're going to try this, and you see the teacher here saying, I'm going to try to keep things as normal as possible, and I'm going to update you, and you can email me or Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a way for the students to videotape their learning back to the teacher. And that was a 5th grade teacher. I need to play you this one because, the message to the students was so heartfelt. Let me get it up here. This is from Breen.
See you soon. I miss you guys. Bye.
Hang on.
Sweet shooting stars, I miss you so much. We're trying something new called Flipgrid. So if you get a chance, follow the directions and make your own.
So again, the teachers were talking about, we're trying something out, and I want you to, be able to email me back. And we thought that was so important. I have one other secondary exam. There's a 1st grade teachers were, this was more of a screenshot. She was actually telling the story to the students, and they were going to send something back to her. And now I've lost the whole presentation. One other version that I think is worth noting. I'm not doing this very well. Get me in. Sorry. This usually doesn't happen.
This one here, family site?
No, examples. This is an AP Environmental Science, and you can see the Schoology, assignments that are posted, and then there's also different kinds of lessons that he's put out after his assignment. But the teachers started using Screencastify, which allows them to show different, like a PowerPoint, but also be able to talk to the kids while they're...
Hello, my awesome APE students. I hope all is well with you, and I just wanted to give you kind of an update.
And of course, everyone's
and a plan
reaching
for the next
out
3
first
weeks.
to say,
So first of all, kind of the goals
want you
of
to feel
this
good.
first Screencastify is to give you some information. So for AP Environmental, kind of our biggest goal is to make sure that we continue our learning. but also that we're doing it in a way that we're staying healthy and keeping things in perspective.
So there's it's almost a social emotional component to all of those that I just thought was important. The other thing is we worked around the clock to get to put a website up that you probably as parents have seen in #RUSD keeps connected, and we have a lot of our links that have to do with if they needed to get not only nutrition but also materials, if they needed parents needed a support desk, and a little bit about how to obtain Chromebooks. At this point, I think we had well over 120 Chromebooks that people were requesting, and so those are being deployed to sites, as well as for our English learner families. We've had individuals reach out to all of our English learner families and see what kind of support they need. We have online check-ins, of course, with our principals. I'm going to go to the teacher one. We have a hub that we've developed and that will continue to be populated. And through our surveys, if the teachers go here, there's lots of different kinds of resources that have been collected for them, as well as we will have some online meets where we can continue to do some training and support for teachers, and one for secondary that we're building also. So we are in the midst of planning and implementing at the same time. Lots of multifaceted approaches for special education. Providers participated also in planning with the teachers, especially the collaboration piece with general ed teachers. Thank you. And case managers connected with families, and we are working with CDE guidance on current IEPs and trying to keep timelines. Sorry, let me get into present. Go ahead.
Go ahead, just present.
Sorry. And then finally, I just wanted to say a little bit about some of the work going to support our neediest families. Our foster youth, homeless, and English learners, we made personal phone calls to make sure that our tech loan program was up and running, and participants were, we had people coming in and getting hotspots today. Personal phone calls to all of our unsheltered homeless families to make sure that they had what they needed in terms of access for food, and if they needed other kinds of assistance. Emails to our socioeconomically disadvantaged, including our homeless and foster youth, to highlight our nutrition program and if they needed the technology. And their English learner teachers and paraprofessionals are continuing to reach out to our families to ensure that they have access or if they need specific help with things. And we have some distance learning English language development units that are continuing. So priority has been on technology and personal phone calls for people, and we've been getting gas cards out to families that need transportation, our foster and homeless. So, all right, I think the next person up is our nutrition services.
Right. So we're going to have our Director of Nutrition Services, Charles Douglas, come out and share a little bit about some of the work that's been done to provide nutrition to our students in this time.
Good evening, Superintendent Stock, members of the board. Yeah, Roger asked me to come out and just, during the time that we are having these school closures, we have been continuing to feed students through the seamless summer option that the state has provided. So on Monday, we served a little bit under 200 meals, 200 breakfasts and lunches. Can we kind of backtrack a little bit? We are serving out of 5 sites. The 2 high schools, Rocklin High, Whitney High, Springview Middle School, Sierra Elementary, and Antelope Creek. Those are the 5 sites that we are serving out of, and we just kind of picked kind of a logistically, strategically locations around the district where students could go ahead and go to those 5 sites and get meals. So based on the waiver through seamless summer option, any student or any child 18 years and under in our transitional students can eat for free regardless of their eligibility. So at this point, there's no monies being exchanged, no PIN numbers being put in, no what's your teacher name, what's your first name, last name, none of that. So we just handing out lunches and we're counting heads. So as I said, Monday, which was the first day, we did a little bit less than 200 meals. Yesterday, we did about 323 meals. And this afternoon, we did about 526 meals out of the 5 sites. So hopefully that trend will keep going up, and we'll see what happens. So as long as the schools are closed, we'll continue to feed through nutrition services.
Is it, go ahead. Is it possible to, so Kathy talked about that we've reached out to our low SES kids around technology and making sure they have what they need in our ELs. Is it something we can also do for free and reduced lunch? Like, I worry about the kids who are eligible, who need the lunch, who just don't know, through tech, just don't know because they don't have ways of reaching them at home. Is there a way we can?
Well, we sent out blast emails and recorded messages, so just word of mouth, and then using technology and social media.
Yeah.
So the word is out there. So.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Kudos to you. That's a big jump in numbers and not easy to plan for. So thank you for your efforts.
My pleasure.
Quick question. On a typical school day, how many free meals are we, or well, no, not so much meals. How many students are typically receiving a free meal, breakfast or lunch or both?
That's kind of hard to ascertain just from memory. I can
No
tell
problem.
you just on a general basis, we typically on a normal school day would serve, well, we're up to about like 4,400, 4,500 lunches per day.
Okay.
Per day. So as you can see with the school closures and the amount of, the crisis that's going on, is just the numbers are smaller. So
Okay.
luckily through the waiver through seamless summer from the state, we're able to go ahead and claim every lunch and breakfast that we serve at the free rate, so we don't have to worry about the free reducing pay. So that's the flexibility of that program.
And is anyone else, our free and reduced rate, isn't it in the 20s? It's a little,
No,
I think
it's
it's
close.
23%.
We're like 18, 19%.
okay, 18, 19%. So,
District-wide.
so you're probably talking close to 1,000, maybe a little less than 1,000 students on a normal day when we're in session would be getting free or reduced lunch.
Somewhere around.
500
right.
students receiving meals today. That's pretty good, but
Right.
obviously there's some more people we want to keep
Right,
reaching out
right.
to. But real quick, thank you so much for everything you and your staff are doing to continue to provide like food that really our students who are most at risk really, really count on that. Thank you so much for everybody being there.
Our pleasure.
Working
I know
hard for
some
the
of
kids.
them heard it because they're probably watching online, so. So they'll hear and get the word out, so thank you
So
guys.
the other thing I'd say real quickly is that, so I appreciate, let me add my appreciation and sort of say this notion of segments, so like between now and spring break, if you will, the fact that we were able to get this together and be ready to go is amazing, and a great credit to you and your staff, and we appreciate it. And the fact, by the way, that I understand we'll be able to serve over spring break as well, which is
Correct.
awesome, so that's fantastic. But then also thinking now about beyond that, and
Right.
are we in the right locations? Can we use our buses to get to other locations? Like starting to think
Right.
through how do we get to the other 500 that aren't?
Right. One of the things I met with the office staff this morning, was just kind of planning for a longer closure. So like, I don't know if you guys know, like Kansas last night decided to close schools for
The
the
whole-
remainder of the school
right,
year. I know Governor Newsom had kind of made, that,
Why?
he hinted at doing that, and so that got me thinking. So I have a colleague out in Kansas, so I actually called him last night. We talked on the phone for about 20 minutes, and he's kind of in a panic. And so it's just like, so just kind of reaching out to colleagues
That's great.
around the country, and just to seeing what everybody is doing, getting some best practices. So we did come in this morning and talked about, okay, what's our short-term goal, which is the next 3 weeks, including spring break, and then our long-term, what do you want to do long-term if schools are closed. So one of the questions were, okay, do we want to add some more sites? Obviously, we're going to continue to feed. can we provide hot meals? So there's some questions that we have to answer long-term,
Yep.
and we'll get there as we get closer.
Awesome, thank you.
Just, so obviously want to add my thanks and congratulations to you and your staff for really, making all of this work. It's amazing.
I appreciate it.
My question is, are you finding any, when we all go to the store, there's not much on the shelf. Are you having any of those same problems with shortages of certain?
No, actually, our vendors have been, when they started getting the word out Thursday and Friday of last week, a lot of them reached out to offer their support. They actually gave us like a list of items of things that were available that were more convenient that we can do bag lunches with. So we've been working with our vendors. So obviously we had orders that were on or in the queue for the next 3 weeks, so they were able to let us go ahead and cancel those orders just because of the situation that's going on. So we haven't, consumer-wise, like the general public, we haven't faced any of those issues yet. So.
Great, thank you.
So, just final, again, I'll add the thank yous as everyone else. Thank you and your staff.
All right.
Do we have a capacity, like if we're normally doing about 1,000, 2,000, are you guys good? I mean, I hate to see a mad rush and we run out. Are we
Right.
got plenty type thing?
No, we're good. As far as like the numbers and the expectations, I actually was, when we met last week, I was, like the baseline of lunches that we want to serve was, I believe, was a little overambitious. So it was always, so we kind of prepped for that big number there. Was kind of disappointed on day one, but I kind of.
It's a good thing. That's a good thing.
But I kind of anticipated it just because of the rain. So it was like I was going to go out to a couple of sites on Monday, but since it rained, I was like, I don't want to go out and check. But yeah, so the numbers were a little lower, but they're steadily rising up. And so we'll see what tomorrow brings.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thanks, sir.
everything you guys do.
All right. Thank you.
Really want to appreciate and know that you'll be looking at other sites when I look up there. I mean,
Correct. Right.
2 elementary schools while kids can go to high school and just
Right.
to me that I'm worried a little bit about the
Right.
elementaries.
Yep.
On the
Correct.
elementaries.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Charlotte, thank you.
Right, and just also to add to that, we are also reaching out beyond just to homeless and foster youth and other families with direct calls to families. And I just can emphasize and appreciate the board's recognition of the work they've done, that we literally closed Friday, served food Monday. There wasn't a single day missed for our students to have the food they need. And that is, as we look at additional sites, the first priority was to get it up and going, and then we'll be fine tuning as we go through the process of different sites, different hours, and different options, including we'd love to be able to move to a hot meal option as well.
Good evening. I'm going to just give kind of a brief review of human resources, or really kind of the focus of my piece, which could have been multifaceted, is really just kind of talking about leaves. And I apologize in advance because you're going to still be wanting when I'm done for more information, but there's a lot of gray, so I'm going to try to put that in a box for you. So just as I kind of put, it's just under normal circumstances, which we know it's not, that we monitor and look for anomalies that go in the system in regards to absences, whether it be students or the adults in our system. And we utilize our frontline system, which you heard ASOP is usually the term where we put in to utilize for the sub. In our transition to distance learning, where teachers have the opportunity or instructional folks have the opportunity to either be on site or be at home, kind of the monitoring has become less and less relevant of absences because we have people both often on campus. We've also started to look at, based on some of the recommendations that we received about social distancing and more specifically working remotely, are looking at potentially other employee groups that can do that, and that's going to kind of monitor how we look at employee absences, because if they're able to perform the tasks required of them during the day, whether it's the Associate Superintendent of Human Resources or one of my administrative assistants, they can do so at that time. Our second slide is just kind of the
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Please.
So so back to sick leave. So I want to make sure I understand that. So
Back to where?
sick leave.
Okay.
So what you're basically saying is what maybe if you couldn't make it into work, you would be sick. In this environment, you probably can still work from home and get it done. But what happens if someone feels like they can't for whatever reason?
So that was part of the work of our MOU. So let's take into example Monday, where we didn't bring in staff to work.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of jumping ahead to slide 3, so hang with me on this, is that, no, you're fine, is that even in the executive orders or even in some of the elements that you're going to vote tonight, the outcome is on how to handle absences are either very traditional, utilize what you have. What makes it unique is that it's obvious the intent is that we don't want to harm employees. So for example, Monday when many of the employees didn't have to actually work, well, there were individuals that were out on leave, maternity leave. Well, why would they be charged that day when all the other, so we have to kind of monitor that.
Makes perfect sense. I guess my question was actually like,
If it
I was
makes
actually
perfect
thinking about
sense, that's scary.
I was actually thinking about subs. Like, in other words, is there any occasions where we sort of, if someone is not able to work that day, we just sort of say, okay, or are we actually bringing in subs?
So what we're, part of working on the MOU with Travis and RTPA was, okay, so the reality is if somebody just is not feeling well enough, can't do their distance learning for that period, that day, that would be something different where we probably wouldn't send a sub. However, that individual goes into quarantine or becomes really ill for a 2 weeks period of time, we're going to have to think, courageously. So why I said to you in the initial piece, why you might be wanting for more information is because really because it wasn't outlined specifically, if X happens, you do Y, which is not uncommon. Really we want to be able to, like I put up here, is during the Human Resources working with each employee groups and dealing with leaves. The intent is to minimize the impact. That was very obvious, is that we don't want to harm individuals for what happened as a result of this. And because of that, I think we're able to kind of clear away some pieces like I just shared you, the maternity leave versus out kind of thing. So it just is a little more time consuming and not something I can say, if this happens, this is what we're going to do. So the big vague given to you by Human Resources. Thanks.
So, Tony, I think it just, to me, to summarize, just comes down to intent.
Sure.
We're not looking to have some kind of metric drive something. We're all in this uncharted waters. We're just working to try to get down with tomorrow and the next day and the next day.
So I guess to be even more vague, and forgive me, Derek, is like, there may be a circumstance where the individual is charged sick leave.
Right. We'll figure it out.
There may be a situation where we say, no, based on X, Y, and Z, they're not going to be charged sick leave. So it's that kind of like individual attention we're going to have to give across different employee groups. And as we look at, you're going to hear the language of essential groups that are working versus those that can work remotely. Well, if I'm working remotely and get ill, I may not be charged a sick day, but someone who is here working because they're an essential, like Charles, and they fall ill, well, is it right that they're charged a sick day because they didn't have that opportunity? So that's the kind of, we're going to have to play through that and kind of go with what I think is very clear is the intent is we don't want to harm employees who get caught into this. It's that situation.
One of the things that I'll say, because we're struggling at our agency too about how to define this, and this probably, I know this wouldn't work at all in a K-12 kind of setting, but we're having to define, as all of our folks are teleworking, when you're, quote, online, that means you're just like at your desk. You're there, you're doing that. When you're available, you're checking and you're doing that, but you may not be there. And then when is personal, either sick leave or vacation time. So kind of trying to define it for people, which is really hard, like you say, because you want maximum flexibility, is I think a struggle for everyone.
And that was part of our work today. Roger and I got to spend time with the majority of employee groups that weren't impacted by the initial distance learning piece. And we did put some form of a definition in there about, being available. We're going to, try to stay local to the best of your ability, but we don't think that in 2 hours I'm going to call you in. It's more like a 24-hour piece. keep up to date with and the reality is, when initially broached, and unfortunately my department was kind of the guinea pig for this first round, and nobody wanted to do it, because I've got 4 kids at home. I don't want to work remotely because it's difficult. I'll drive to Rocklin on a weekend that I want to get some extra work done. But however, where we kind of got people steered in the right direction, including myself, is like, the intent of this is not for convenience or the intent of this is to help prevent the spread of the virus.
Right.
So let's keep that in mind, even though it might not be the best thing that we want to do to work remotely, but let's be mindful of that. And I think everybody's kind of got on board, and we've got submitted plans from almost every group, so we're pretty good. But it was a valid, so what does working remotely mean?
Right. One final question before you even
Sure.
about the MOU. And so as I read the MOU, I want to make sure I understand it, which is to sort of say, while we are currently out until after spring break, we don't know how long it will. And so this MOU is in place until it's not, is sort of thing. There's no specific date. We'll deal with it when we're out of this crisis. So I want to make sure that's correct. And the second thing is, the other thing I read in the MOU was I read an intent, and tell me if this is correct in this, and I'm looking with you, is this idea that we'll work on this. And so as we get down the road, if we're still here, we find there's things that need to change, we'll engage and we'll change. And this is to get us through until we need to rethink.
So I think Travis is probably going to say very similar to what I did. If not, feel free to come on up and add things in. When we started negotiating this on Friday morning, it changed by lunch, and then it evolved by before we left, and then I got a call that when the governor came out and made it evolved heavily.
Yeah.
So when we got back together on Monday, I think we had a much different picture of what was going on than we did Friday, because Friday was a little bit all over the map. Things got tighter and tighter, and so yes, we're committed to what we've got, but we're also, I think, both very realistic that in a snap of a finger, this could go different, and if, Governor Newsom's, we know we're going to have to be back together. Travis, you got anything?
In addition to just learning we all have, like we will learn, right, over the next few weeks, and we'll learn and we'll figure out how to do this better.
Yeah, I was just saying, there's built-in triggers in the language of pretty much anything changes but we built it under the assumption of best intentions that we're gonna actually be back in the classroom, right, hopefully. But ultimately, it's as flexible as every update as we get.
Yeah.
Like Tony said, we went through probably 4 major changes just on Friday alone, kind of landed in a good spot, and on the way out the door, we got a call from Roger, and it was like, okay, we gotta regroup everything. So, we're trying to be as fluid as the situation will allow.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Board President Miller, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Stock. So I'm here tonight to give you a quick overview and update on the custodial cleaning supplies that we're using now and our methodology as we've gone into this transition period. So maintenance and operations, we've implemented an enhanced cleaning process right now. We're using a probiotic cleaner instead of chemicals right now, and that's now at every school, and it's all at all of our operational sites. This probiotic cleaner removes the bacteria from surfaces, and it lasts up to 72 hours once it's applied. Safe to use around staff and children, and it's environmentally friendly. So if there's a virus that's been identified in a classroom or one of our operational buildings, we use another product called Oxyvir, and that kills the viruses immediately when we apply that. This product has been recommended by the Center for Disease Control, CDC, and it's only used when a virus has been detected in one of our buildings. Now, we've kind of gone away from that as things are evolving, and we are applying that. There's been a lot of meetings here in the district office this week, so our custodial staff has been applying the Oxyvir after the meetings and probiotics, and we're kind of working through this as we progress through the next couple of weeks. And also where they had the training at the school sites, we were using the Oxyvir and then coming back with a probiotic cleaner. We've also installed hand sanitizer dispensers at all of our multi-purpose rooms, so that's in there now. Chuck and the team, our custodial staff's done a great job moving very quickly to get those installed at all sites and going. And we do have enough supplies in the warehouse to get us through the end of the year if we needed to. So our custodial staff and custodial supervisor and assistant director of maintenance and operations have been proactive in getting enough supplies for us to get us through this next period. I do want to talk about where we are now with kind of our enhanced cleaning. So the custodians, when they all came back on Monday, when they came back to sites, we started cleaning in the NPR rooms, breaking down the multi-purpose room tables, cleaning the tables, going into the gyms and the lockers, and staying away from the teachers while they were doing their training on site. As the teachers have now going back to distant learning and moving out of the classrooms, our custodians are now going back into the classrooms and doing some enhanced cleaning, which is all the touchable surfaces in a room, tables, doorknobs, desk, and wiping it down and doing, the vacuuming and cleaning on that. As the teachers come back in, if they need to get into their classroom and get some materials or supplies, our staff will come back at a time where they're not in the classroom. We do not want to disrupt them. We want to support them as they go through these times and just kind of work together. The lead custodians and custodians on site will work with the principal and the teachers as we move around the campus and clean these campuses. I also want to thank Travis for his help this morning. We're talking about energy usage. So right now we had over 800 classrooms with heaters running and lights on, and so what we decided to do is turn off, as of tomorrow morning, all the classrooms. The HVAC units will be shut down, and if a teacher needs to come in or staff member needs to come into the classroom, they can hit the override button and turn the heat on. And then
And that would then just be just for that single classroom?
Correct, just for that single classroom. And then, as of Monday, all of the administration buildings will be shut down also. And same thing, hit the override button and go ahead and get your usage moving from there. We're hoping to see some substantial savings for this time period on that. And I want to thank the teachers, Travis, for working with us on that and being flexible as we move forward with this. Any questions?
Yeah. And it's more of a hope, but assuming that we're into this for 2, 3, 4 weeks type thing, is there an opportunity, not maybe not from our staff, but outside, to do any kind of service on stuff, or are those companies all not interested in, like HVAC service or anything where I have plenty of time?
So our maintenance staff, they're currently going through their current work orders right now, knocking them out. We're able to get in there and get that done. At this time, we don't have any specific need for outside groups. We do have the fire alarm contractor working at Rocklin High School. So we were able to, quickly move the contractor into the gym, both gyms, get that knocked out over this time period, switch their schedule around so that come June, we don't impact the campus with all of their camps and tournaments that are going on. So
there's a small benefit to the bad timing, right?
And there is. And, they had a lot of work in the Bay Area, and their employees were able to come up and work in Rocklin. So we're really gearing up to try and get as much done as we can through this period of time.
Excellent.
So.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Craig.
All right, thank you.
Chief Capra, communications.
Sorry about that. Good evening, Board of Trustees, President Miller, and Superintendent Stock. Well, the role of communications was a significant one as we worked hard to ensure timely messages to our wonderful families and dedicated staff. We did this through our usual channels, including school messenger emails, voice alerts, our district and school websites. And that graphic you see was placed on all of our websites initially as we received important updates from our County Health Department and Office of Education. We also managed a significant amount of media requests, mostly educating reporters about what was happening in our school district was also happening at all Placer County school districts. Our social media posts have and will continue to provide our RUSD community with vital updates. As you can see, our terrific nutrition services folks were featured distributing meals, and other posts include our various teachers and staff members working hard as we all move forward with distance learning and working. More posts have since been posted and include our terrific facilities, maintenance, and operations staff going above and beyond, keeping our schools clean and safe. And finally, these are just more pictures featured on social media, but we wanted to share. They're so great. Thank you again, President Miller, for your idea as well with the pictures. Sometimes we get caught up so much with the immediate vital communications needs that we forget about the amazing work actually being done and the people are being highlighted. So when we started that on social media, our families and our community, they just responded in such a positive and supportive way of our RUSD staff, and you can see that on Facebook and Twitter. We also have since put out the call for not just staff, but families to send us their pictures and selfies of learning from home. So we are very excited to share those once we start receiving them.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, I have one comment, and just person I was telling Mr. Miller earlier today, I asked a few people in the neighborhood just around, hey, how was the communication from RUSD? And it overwhelmingly very positive. People were happy to hear from the teachers, see the feedback. So thank you to you and your team for sending that out. So just small tidbit, but it was positive feedback. So I think that's a good thing.
Thank you, and it is a team effort, really. Cabinet leaders, folks in the district office, Kelsey, we all worked hard to get these things out in a timely manner, so we appreciate that, and thank you for sharing.
That was it. I was just going to say,
all right.
thank you. It has been a lot. I know that it has been, and with things changing so quickly, and families are really anxious, and so they appreciate all of the communication, so thank you.
I want to build off that as well. What Trustee Price said was, I really appreciate, these Facebook posts are great, but more than that, I appreciate the emails going out, letting folks know what we're thinking about, letting folks know about distance learning, the things are coming. We said we get out Thursday, we got out Wednesday, the fact that we're moving forward. And I have to say, in these times of turbulence and uncertainty, sometimes just hearing from us that we don't know is reassuring. So not hearing from us can be very scary. And so I appreciate the leadership you've done in making sure that we're trying to keep as in touch as we can. And when anything we know, we're putting that out to the parents. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
So if you can hit the slide to move us to next steps, please. So we will continue to collaborate with the public health officials, our labor partners, and others to respond to this public health crisis and keep our students, families, and community informed. And you can always check the latest information on our website, and we've listed that website address here. But also, we've talked in our district this year quite a bit about the transformational times we're in regarding of how do we look through a lens of equity, how do we use collaboration as a means of work, and then how do we use continuous improvement in cycles to really expand what we do. And Kathy Pond and I were talking the other day and thought, well, this is really one giant Plan, Do, Study, Act PDSA cycle on a lot of things. Distance learning, working to communicate in an ever-changing environment and improving and fine-tuning that. So we have a lot of PDSAs going on in our system, and we continue to apply as a lens of equity, as the board is called on us to do, and definitely collaboration will be the key to actually seeing this through and being successful. And so with that, trustees, if you have any further questions of staff, or this concludes our
Thank you,
report.
Mr. Superintendent. Appreciate that. Board questions around, we asked our questions? Camille?
The only thing, and I appreciate it, and Kathy, you touched on it, just how we're reaching out to our English learner families, that we are, where translation is needed by phone, we are contacting them to ensure that they understand all the information that is being sent home to everyone. So really appreciate all the work that staff is doing to help make sure that everyone is getting the information and understanding it. So thanks so much.
Great. I mean, the one thing I will say, so I really appreciate you raising continuous improvement and improvement science as part of it. So I would also argue it's great that PDSA cycles are going on, but the key is, Derek will appreciate, the key to these working is data. And what I mean by that is understanding, knowing whether to know whether or not it's successful. So we're about to do this huge experiment on distance learning. How do we know if it's working? Like what does working mean? What do we want to have happen? Again, if right now for the next 2 weeks, if people just feel like they've heard from us, that may be what we want. So how do we know that? If going down the road, we need a little more understanding of how we're doing against our standards, how do we know that? So starting to think through what are the data elements we need to look at, from how our custodians are doing to how our bus drivers are doing. Across the board, let's think about what do we know? How are we going to look at this to know whether or not we're getting the outcomes we need to get?
And Rick, I think you kind of two ways of probably solving that. So there's either just hardcore data that we can get, physical, like as Travis was saying earlier, how many times kids are logging on, are they sending the notes back and forth? I think the other piece, and it's gonna be, when this is all past us and have that time of having that plus delta and the Monday morning quarterback conversation where it's, okay, what worked? What worked in custodial? What worked for the teachers? What worked in admin? Just really just getting that true feedback.
Right.
And we'll figure out, if we have to do this ever again, we'll know what works and what doesn't. But it's just that feedback that will help.
Well, and I think just to acknowledge that most likely, everything's not going to work, and it's okay to say,
Exactly.
this isn't working.
Absolutely.
Let's change it up, and, no harm, no foul, that's what we're doing here, and so everybody's got to feel comfortable that that's okay. That's what we're doing. And the other thing I would say is thinking about some of the kids in my own family at a certain age, whether I'm thinking middle school and stuff, who are probably not going to say when it's hard, or not going to say, you know what I mean? Roll their eyes and move on. So how do we, like Rick said, how do we know? And I'm not sure how we know, but to think about that, I'm sure all of you think about it with your students all the time, but any hints we could give parents about how they should think about it will be helpful as well, I think.
Yeah, this is more comment to repeat. I don't think we can repeat enough. Thank you to everyone, to how hard everyone has been working just to get us to this point where we are today. And we know how much hard work is going to continue. I have a little bit of perspective on what is going on in other school districts, and I can say we are ahead of the curve, and that is because we have been working very hard, not just for the last couple days, but for quite some time. So really, bravo to the district, bravo to our staff for starting to look at what has really become the foundation for what we're doing now. Months ago, when we had our public safety power shutoffs, that thinking that people started to put into what do we do if we have to close for a day or two or three has really become the foundation for a lot of what we're doing now. Congratulations, we really should, well, as a board member, I'm proud I get to sit on this board because you are all working hard and doing a great job. With that said, as we've all acknowledged tonight, we're gonna make mistakes. Certain things aren't gonna work. We had a 40-minute delay because our audio wasn't working at the start of the meeting.
We're trying to model what
Number
won't
one.
work.
Things are gonna happen. I worked with a number of schools up in Butte County during the campfire, through the campfire, and something that everybody up there learned is when you're in that type of unprecedented situation, you just have to remember everybody's working hard, everybody's trying. We need to be patient with each other. We need to be forgiving when we mess up and keep trying to improve. And we are all just so focused on students trying to deliver quality education, but also some sense of normalcy to them. And that is incredibly important. And that is huge for our students, the social emotional piece. We absolutely can't forget that all of us adults, everyone in the community is going through this at the same time. And especially when people are stressed and working really hard to try and help others, sometimes you need to take a little bit of time to make sure you're taking care of yourself, and we need to take care of each other. So that's what I would leave everyone with. This is gonna be tough. It's gonna continue to change, but I'm so proud of what we've done. I'm so proud of where we're going. And I think we're absolutely approaching this with the right sense of community and shared purpose. And that makes me so proud. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Eric. Other comments? Great. Okay, so thank you all again. Thank you for the report and thank you for the work. So moving on, this is normally at a period in the board meeting where we take public comment. Obviously, there's the public is not able to join us tonight. And I should say, just for what it's worth, that we prefer to have these in open. We prefer to have community members come. We like it that way, but we're also obligated under the law, under the Brown Act, to do that. There has been, because of this unprecedented time, the governor has suspended the Brown Act in these moments. And so this is sort of a new precedent of the law, and we're going to figure out how we're going to do these board meetings going forward. We're actually looking into whether we can do these virtually, so we also don't have to be in space when we shouldn't be. We should be at home as well. But while we're normally going to have public comment, we have a link on our site, and if you're watching online, there's a way to put in a question and sort of and put your public comment in there. We will be reviewing it. We'll be watching these, and also we will make sure that the public comment you're putting gets into the minutes, so it's clearly reflected that you said it. Right now, the only public comment we have is that you can hear us, which is a great public comment. So, but if you want to add those, we will certainly look at those, and we would appreciate any comments folks have or thoughts they have moving forward. So with that, let's move on to 6.1 and our update from our Rocklin Teachers Professional Association, Travis Monette.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to start off with a huge thank you to everybody that made this virtual element happen. I know that was important for the community to have a voice or at least an eye into the conversations going on tonight. I also want to take a chance to say hi, Mom. I'm YouTube famous now. One of our three viewers? She told me she was going to start watching the meetings because she keeps hearing about me attending them. So anyway, just a little 5 minutes of fame. Thank you, guys. So I'm going to start with echoing the many, many thanks to everybody top to bottom, no matter what department they're in, what their responsibilities are. They have stepped up and I think knocked it out of the park. So, and as we've mentioned already, there's been many bumps in the road and there are going to be many more. And the words we kind of keep referring back to are flexibility and fluid. And I think if those two words are in mind, and then assuming best intentions, I think that we can't really go wrong. Trustee Stevens, you mentioned that Rocklin's leading the way in a lot of things, and I want to give a lot of credit to all the parties involved on all sides with our MOU especially. Around how we're going to continue educating and offering opportunities for our students to at least maintain and hopefully at least and as well even advance in their education, at least for the 3 weeks that we know about right now. We've been hearing from a lot of colleagues around the state that the Rocklin Unified MOU is what they're using to guide their approach as they're moving through this journey. So it's really rewarding to know all that time and energy and all that effort and, you know, the banging our heads against the wall, the frustrating conversations that came up was not for lack of the right thing to do and put us in a good spot for our community, but also is having a greater impact for the state as a whole. So it's really rewarding to hear that. Also, I want to, start with, I'm going to give a shout out to Chuck and the support staff that he represents, because I know that they have been overwhelmed, to say the least, because there's a lot of pressure on the hysteria around this virus. And I know that his crews are working to the bone, day and night, and trying to do a lot of great things to provide the safe environment. Because when it comes down to it, that's what we need to start with. If we're safe for our employees and our students, that's where it's got to start. After that, we can kind of backfill all of the educational pieces and things like that. It's weird as a teacher to think of the educational piece kind of being second, but right now I think it's a reality. It's kind of a weird thing. I actually had to ask the teaching staff around the district to almost pull back a little bit, because as you guys know, teachers in Rocklin, we're not just reaching to the bar, we're jumping over it, we're raising it. And it's kind of weird as an educator to kind of ask people to pull back on that a little bit, but knowing that there's a human element to this. Whether it's you as a parent teacher and you got kids at home, I teach high school, I'm not qualified to help my 5th and 6th graders with what they're doing, and I'm not going to lie to you that I am, but also as a teacher to know that there's a lot of parents at home, or maybe not at home, because they're still, showing up to work and taking care of what they need to take care of their families, and just realizing those expectations that we're putting on our students, that those are going to come with a lot of potential anxiety and additional stress that our students maybe just aren't ready for or aren't even realizing yet. So just everybody acknowledging that. And we saw many shining examples from Kathy that's going on. And those are just little tiny thumbnails of what's out there. So, but at the same time, I really want to give a big thank you to everybody, again, around that MOU, that the conversation, and realize that not everybody is those examples, right? We have people that right now email is their comfort level. And sending, those communications and just informing families. President Miller, you mentioned sometimes just telling them, we don't really know right now, we're in this together. That's all we can do, but that's enough right now.
And just the willingness to have that flexibility in there. And, and then some goals built in too. The intent around a lot of this is, if email is where we're comfortable right now, if Screencastify is where we're comfortable right now, by next week, let's get a little bit better, right? Let's keep growing the toolbox and keep evolving, because we know the situation's gonna keep evolving. I mean, there's been developments since we've been sitting in here tonight that are gonna have some bigger impacts for the educational piece as a whole. So just those kinds of things. I wanna give a couple just kind of extra shout outs to both Marty Flowers and Bill McDonald. I don't know if they're hiding in the back room or if they're watching at home tonight or not, but their work was massively important, and most importantly, their flexibility within the models that they created for what distant learning was going to look like in Rocklin Unified. Because the reality is, nobody knew. We had ideas, we had conceptual things, but they came prepared and ready to put something on the table that, I mean, I think we might have changed a couple words on the documents, and it was that ready to go. So huge effort to Kathy and her entire team, but Marty and Bill especially, they really kind of identified, and their expertise in the secondary and elementary worlds they represent really shined through. So it was a huge, huge piece for a lot of the things around this entire situation. And as we know, the situation's ever evolving, right? And we've said that a lot. One thing I want to make sure, or hope that we don't lose sight of, is that no matter how amazing our teachers are and how well planned we are and how in front of things are, there is no deniable element, or an undeniable element of this, that our students are going to be behind where we expect and typically see them, whether it's only a 3-week thing or this extends longer. And the reason I mention that is I hate to kind of go back to old business, but I know we've been talking a lot about budget cuts and things the last handful of meetings. I'm just hopeful that we, as we move through this, knowing that we start next year, if we get to hopefully start or finish this year, but we're going to start next year behind where we typically are, and looking at how we can adjust whatever cuts that we've already are looking to make or might have to continue to make, even given this situation, because it's going to deplete resources potentially as well. But we keep that idea of we're going to have to make up some ground for our students. We owe them that, and make sure that any cuts that have been made or again potentially are going to come in the future, that we keep them away from or keep them from being a barrier to gain ground on the ground that we are going to lose in the inevitable of this situation. So just kind of that in the back of our mind. I know we have a lot of other things right now, but there's a point, we will get through this, and then we have a service to do, and realistically, we're going to have some ground to make up for our students. I think some of the statistics that I've been hearing around in the news is, this could have a 2 to 3 year ripple effect on the students in our schools right now. So, think about where whatever student is in our district, where are they going to be in 2 to 3 years in the life kind of progression, and then what skills are they maybe going to have to be, trying to compensate or deal with that. Maybe just had a little regression right now. I know we face that every year in education with summer, but we usually have kind of front-loaded summer, and we're planned and we're ready and we're anticipating this situation comes with that giant gap potentially, but it also comes with no anticipation and just the mental space. I don't think any of us were, even though we might have anticipated it, the surrealness of school being canceled in California in the month of March essentially is just unheard of, right? We don't deal with the weather and the weeks of snow days and things like that, so it's a whole element, and again, we said it many times tonight that we couldn't account for, but we're getting through, and we're doing a great job so far, and, we're gonna continue to be fluid and flexible in that. I know there's one other thing, it's a board item later, I don't know if you want me to come back, it's, just had a thought around the resolution that's going to be proposed, so I can come back later.
Why don't you come back and speak to it? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's all I have. And again, just major thank yous I know there's groups I'm leaving out or names that I probably should mention, but on behalf of everybody involved, this has to truly be a team effort, and it's not going to happen, and our kids deserve that. So I appreciate everybody's efforts in that.
Thanks, Travis.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Any questions for
Not questions, just to say, Travis, I agree with you when we think about where kids are, but on the social emotional side, what families have gone through, all families, ours, and whether you're teaching in a classroom or being in a classroom, there's a lot going on and stresses that they've not had to face. So how that has a lasting effect,
Right.
and how kids react and what they do, and I think we're just going to need to be really cognizant of that and address it as we can.
I think similar context, with all the things that have gone on earlier in the year and up to this point, in conversations and emails and texts and Facebook and all that stuff, I think it's good for the community, and I think it's good for all of us to realize that in adversity, hey, all that stuff goes down, everyone moves forward. I think everyone's in it here for the kids. We're figuring it out as we go, day by day, minute by minute, and it's, no hard feelings, no pent-up emotion, no thought of angst or anger. It's like, hey, listen, I think everybody, teachers, custodial groups, CSA, administration, everybody is looking forward and doing that. And I think we just got to recognize that, and all the stuff that's happened in the past, we're all moving forward, and I think it's just a good example of showing that to the community.
Thanks, Travis. Yep. Okay, moving on. Chuck?
Good evening, President Miller and Board of Trustees and Superintendent Stock. We've all been tested to our limits here. I mean, even starting up this board meeting, and we kind of had a little faulties where we're kind of stumbling, but we're picking up the pieces. I mean, I think that the custodial staff has been doing a great job. I know that we're shorthanded, even with the subs coming in. I mean, we can't get enough subs to cover all the positions, but giving a good shout out to the teachers in the certified and the classified staff. I also want to give a shout out to our subs. They put themselves out there to help out too, and they've been a big help. Even if we are shorthanded, I think that our progress has been great as far as moving forward. There has been a lot of questions though, people asking, hey, we're being sent home. Are we going to be getting paid for this? And I mean, a storm of questions. It's been unreal. But I think we've been able to answer those questions that yes, you guys will be getting paid for staying at home and doing that part, because you're being asked to. This is definitely a different situation, not to our normal type of situation. It's a crisis. It really is. So we're doing everything that we can, and we're glad to be out there doing what we do, cleaning, doing food service, getting those people taken care of, because the people are very important to us. So we want to make sure that they're all safe and everything. And at the same time, as we bring in people, including the subs, we definitely want to make sure that they're all trained properly, so they can do their job properly and not make mistakes and get this ball going and move forward. So I thank everybody for being here tonight, and I thank the custodial staff and certified and classified and all of you for putting this all together, because you guys have been remarkable too at getting this COVID-19 taken care of. So, I mean, it has been a task.
Yeah.
So, thank you all.
Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it. Any questions for Chuck? The only thing I'd say is that in terms of payroll, I do appreciate that. I mean, I do want to say from our perspective is that we are glad that people are still getting paid, but they're getting paid because the work is going on, right? Because they're still, we need classrooms cleaned, they're getting cleaned, right? If teachers they may be home, but they are working, right? So we are getting our money's worth, and we appreciate you staying in the job and doing the hard work in front. So thank you.
Yeah. Now another question that has come up, I almost forgot about. We do have some employees that live in the Sacramento area,
right,
has a stay-in order, a stay-in place, and they've come to me and asking me, hey, if we have the stay-in place order, do we need to come to work? I mean, and I told them this is also new, that keep checking your emails, keep checking the emails from the district. Go on the CSEA website and check your emails there. But definitely, these things are changing day to day, so.
Appreciate that. Appreciate your
We look for those emails from you guys to let us know, what we need to do next. So thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Thank you very much.
And we are actually grappling with those, and we are having a special cabinet meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. that I know just before the board meeting started, I invited both the RTPA and CSEA presidents to join us as we're going to grapple with some of those issues and hopefully come up with some of those answers tomorrow in a collaborative way. So we hope to be as responsive and real time as we can, and as the conditions we know tonight might be changed by tomorrow morning. but we appreciate your willingness
Oh, we guarantee it.
to be able to join us tomorrow on short notice.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 8, action items. We'll start with the consent calendar 8.1. All matters listed under the consent calendar are to be considered routine and will be enacted by one motion followed by a roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the Board of Trustees, audience, or staff requests specific items removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and action. Any agenda item removed will be voted upon following the motion to approve the consent calendar. Do I have a motion for the full approval of the consent calendar?
So moved.
Moved by Rochelle, seconded by Derek. Anyone wishing to remove anything from the consent calendar on the board, staff? Yes. Okay. Brandon, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Camille Mabin.
Yes.
Derek Counter.
Yes.
Eric Stevens.
Yes.
Rochelle Price.
Yes.
Rick Miller.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to move on to action item 9.1, a resolution granting superintendent emergency powers to respond effectively to the novel COVID-19 public health emergency. Superintendent Stock.
Yes, it's been widely discussed this evening. In December of 2019, there was an outbreak of respiratory illness due to the coronavirus, now known as COVID-19, that was identified and declared by the World Health Organization a public health pandemic. President Donald Trump declared a national emergency on March 13th, and Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency on March 4th, and issued subsequent executive orders to enable state and local agencies to more effectively address the threat of COVID-19. Therefore, a resolution granting the superintendent emergency powers to respond even more effectively to COVID-19, the public health emergency, is being brought to the board for approval. And the resolution is written to provide the superintendent the authority to take measures to ensure the safety of our employees, of our students, and our campuses, and also being able to respond to the dynamic and ever-changing occurrences that we've all commented on quite a bit this evening. And so this resolution was drafted by the district's legal counsel and is presented for the board for its consideration this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Do you have any board comment on the resolution? Seeing none. Do we have any? Oh, Barbara, are you looking to say? Oh, you're just stretching. It's good to see you. Okay, Travis.
Hello, my name is Travis Mojet. I live at 3932 Sweetwater here in Rocklin. I'm a parent and an employee of the district. I'm here just to share the opinion because I knew it was going to be a limited audience. So I had a handful of both employees and community members reach out to me just with some voices that they had some questions around this proposal. So I don't know if you can answer them right now, and I don't know if the answers are even out there right now, but on their behalf, I just want to ask a couple of questions. The number one kind of tone to the conversations that came when this proposal hit the board docs, and it was kind of public knowledge, was the question or the concern, obviously understanding that this is not a predictable situation. It is very unique and very one-off. But just the concern of the school board relinquishing its authority to an individual that isn't elected to represent the community. So I couldn't sit by and just let that concern go. I'm sure that, others have shared that comment, or it might show up in the virtual public comment at some point. But that was something that came up through community as well as staff members. Just if we have elected officials to be the voice of the community, what kind of repercussions or what risk or kind of things might be being overlooked, or at least hopefully are being considered in relinquishing that power authority in a given situation. Obviously known that this is a very specific and unique example of when that would happen, but just again, something I wanted to make sure that the community felt that I could voice that, since people knew I was going to be here tonight. And then from a labor perspective, the concerns I got are really around the piece in this proposal where directives could be given to public employees and I understand there's law, there's a lot of things, but employees could be directed to do work that is way out of the scope of their normal job description, ultimately, under this. And to be completely frank, the concern of teachers or staff members as a whole being directed to be babysitters. And I'll give you the example that kind of came to me was that there's discussion in some of the Bay Area communities that are really struggling right now with getting their healthcare providers in to work because of childcare issues with schools and daycares being closed. And some of the proposals in those communities are that the schools are going to become the daycare facilities and the teachers are going to become the hired help in that situation, or the staff. So just that concern from what I'm hearing from labor groups around, and again, I'm not saying that's our intent or our plan, but those are just, concerns of, for many reasons of that's not what people signed up for, as well as the real reason of if I'm going to be directed, who's going to take care of my family? And, the human element, like we keep saying tonight. So again, I'm not making any accusations, those are just comments and concerns that came my way around this resolution. I think the unknown of it is in the anxiety around all the unknown is kind of where that's coming from, but I just want to have a chance to share that. Yeah.
Appreciate you saying that. Thanks. Let me just say a couple things. So, one, from my perspective, first of all, this is not unique to Rocklin. There are districts, there are boards across the state that are actually across the country that are doing similar things. Recognizing this is an unprecedented moment and wanting to make sure that we have all the tools in our toolbox to deal with this. I would say that we are not respectfully relinquishing power, we're delegating power in a moment that we can take back at any moment. So we can come back together at any moment and rescind this. And so what I think the purpose for it, from my perspective, is that if there are those moments, then we're out of town, or we're traveling, or we're doing whatever. I guess we're not going to be traveling a lot, but we are unavailable. That we wouldn't want what I would characterize as bureaucracies to stand in the way of making a move. And so this gives the superintendent the authority then to make a move when necessary. He still reports to this board. He's still an employee of this board. If he does something that was inappropriate, that would be problematic from our perspective. We would absolutely hold him accountable for that. And I think he knows that, and I feel confident that he would go into it with that understanding. This is not a toy, but something to be used only in extreme circumstances. I would also say, and Tony and Roger, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but nothing in here replaces the CBA. Nothing in here replaces the MOU. He has no ability to go. We cannot do things that are not according to the contract. And so this just allows us within the current scope of the thing to make moves that we think are about. And I think it's just a safety measure that makes sense from my perspective in that sense.
Oh, yeah, I'll just add, thank you for sharing all of that, Travis. I think I get and understand the comments and concerns, and I would just echo everything Rick just said. I think from my perspective, mostly this resolution just addresses a lot of the gray area that is inherent in a superintendent's discretion, and it's just clearing up that gray area and saying, during the duration of the emergency, yes, the board has explicitly given the superintendent authority to take emergency action, in particular when there wouldn't be time to convene a normal board meeting. And as Rick said, ultimately, every superintendent's still accountable to a board. And I feel as if we as the board have been getting a lot of communication from Superintendent Stock. So by the way, thank you very much throughout all of this. I feel like we've been well informed, even though things are changing on a daily basis. And I would certainly assume and have every expectation that's going to continue. So hopefully a lot of the authority we're explicitly granting in this resolution doesn't necessarily even have to be used in the next couple weeks. But if it happens, and we don't have to wait a day or two or three until at least 3 of us can show up and vote on it.
So I'm going to take this from a very personal kind of in my own job, looking at doing the same thing with my commission, because there are decisions that need to be made that will help our county first fives, that having to wait for a commission meeting or call a special meeting or doing something will just prolong help and support that we could give in our, so ensuring that our superintendent has flexibility with that is important, I think, to allow us to move forward as quickly as we can.
Any other board
Yeah, just, again, echoing what everybody said, I think there is inherent bureaucracy in this process. We all know it. There's meetings and there's decisions that have to happen. I think given the element of chaos that we're all dealing with on a day by day, hour by hour, waiting for communication to come down, whether it be from Sacramento to Placer County, into Rocklin, et cetera. Roger still reports to all of us. Decisions will still be made. I think this just allows everyone to be fluid, and I think you just have to realize, as we all said before, there's an intent to it. I don't think there's any malintent in handing the authority over. It's just get things done as fast as they can, because we don't want to wait, and we don't want to be behind the 8 ball because we had to get 3 people into a conversation. So,
Any other board comment? Great. Can I get a motion? Moved by Camille, seconded by Derek. Brenda, can we get a roll call?
Camille Maben?
Yes.
Derek Counter?
yes.
Eric Stevens?
Yes.
Rochelle Price?
Yes.
Rick Miller?
Yes. So Barbara, I appreciate you being there. I'm trying to just hold tight for 1 second, but please stay. So I'm modeling making mistakes tonight, because to try to model for our community that's going to happen. So I realize, I have a thing with this. I keep skipping board member comments. That's on me. My apologies. But I want to skip back real quick, and please just, you're great, to 7.1, 7.2. I know our students not here, but board member comments. Do any of my fellow board members have any comments that they'd like to make? You good? You're good?
No.
Yeah, good. Mr. Superintendent, you're good. Fantastic. All right, I was almost like it was planned. Okay, let's move forward to 9.2, approval of second interim report. Deputy Superintendent Patterson.
Good evening, President Miller, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Stock. Tonight, I will be presenting the highlights of the second interim report that's in your board packet. First, I want to thank my staff and the business department for all their hard work in preparing the second interim estimated actuals and multi-year, especially Beth Parrish, our Director of Fiscal Services and Purchasing. This is what I will be reviewing with you tonight. So based on current assumptions, the district will be able to meet its financial obligations in the current and future 2 years, and therefore, with your approval, we will file a positive certification with the Placer County Office of Education. I just wanted to note that had the board not approved the difficult budget reductions in January of 2019, a negative certification would have been required, as the district would not have been able to certify that it could meet its financial obligations next year. I will be showing you what the multi-year projection would have looked like had that not occurred later on in the presentation. Just to go over a couple budget basics, school districts in California are required to submit 3-year budgets to the County Office of Education 3 times a year. The next one coming up is the estimated actuals for 1920 and adopted for the 2021 school year. And then you just saw the first interim that was approved in December, which covered activity from July 1st through October 31st. And then again tonight, showing actual activity through January 31st. A budget are assumptions. They're based on assumptions and actual events. An important point is that changing conditions require changes in the assumptions throughout the year. And all budgets are based on the best projections possible, adjusting for actual revenue expenditures throughout the year. This chart explains the continuous budget cycle. And as you can see, we're at March, we're at the second interim, and we continually update the budget with new information throughout the year. The next budget that the board approves will be in June, again, with the estimated actuals for this year and the adopted budget for next year. The major budget changes, not every budget change, but the major budget changes in revenue since we reported to the board in December with the first interim are listed here. The 2 larger ones are We received an updated projection for special education revenue through the Placer Special Education Local Plan Area, otherwise known as the SELPA, and our AB 602 funding model of $372,000, and that will be adjusted again based on our actual final pupil count in April. We'll see how that goes. And P2ADA and our percentage as a total of the whole SELPA. We also, as you already know from a previous presentation, did reduce the LCFF funding based on the estimated decrease of funding of 30 ADA. That was about $264,000. And then for expenditures, and the summary will be on the next page, expenditures that have been adjusted, just some of the major ones. We did defer the purchase of science textbooks for some grades of $970,000. And we also, as we normally do at this time, we review all of the site and department budgets and kind of look back historically versus what we have spent year to date, and our staff estimates what we think is not going to be spent this year. Of course, all of this was done before coronavirus hit, so we based our estimates on what we normally do, and so those budgets are adjusted and expenditures are reduced, but we do assign those in fund balance, and then once we close the books, we book that as a carryover for the sites to use in the future year. So that's like your site discretionary, restricted lottery, and those kinds of budgets that they have. So this is a summary. It's based on the SACS report format of revenues and expenditures, showing the difference from the excess of expenditures over revenues at first interim versus at second interim. And this multi-year projection, as well as the next couple slides, I've added in the 2022-23 year, because when we come back to you in June, that will be our third budget year that will the board will be reporting on and budgeting for. And so I just want to show you the impact of the deficit spending in the unrestricted portion of the budget. And I just wanted to mention the budget reductions approved by the board or voted on the board at the March 4th meeting are included in here, and so if any adjustments are made based on the May revise, such as the COLA or whatever may happen, that will come back to you in May. But these projections in 2021 through 22-23 include the budget reductions. So this is the combined general fund, showing the total revenues, expenditures, and deficit spending, and our ending fund balance. So you can see the deficit spending has gone down based on the adjustments for the budget reductions. And then, as you know, the fund balance is required to be broken down into these components. Non-spendable consists of prepaid expenses for textbook adoptions and revolving cash fund, restricted fund balance for funding and expenditures legally restricted by a third party. And an example of that is the routine restricted maintenance that must be spent on deferred maintenance and facilities. Another one is low performing students block grant and restricted lottery. And then committed by the board are those two items, the facilities use and cell tower funds that are to be spent on facilities and field repairs. And the assignments are for future expenditures such as textbooks, unrestricted donations, and site budget carryover. So you can see on this fourth year, we're at the 3% minimum reserve, and so we will be able to file a budget that the PCOE will approve. This is a slide I was telling you about. What if budget reductions had not been made? What would our multi-year projection look like? And we would have had to file a negative. And negative means that you cannot meet your financial obligations in the current or next year. So as you can see, our 2021 is below the 3%. Had we not made you had not voted to make the reductions last year and this year. And so this is thankfully not our multi-year budget. Potential changes for the multi-year. As I stated earlier, our budget is still based on many assumptions, and this is just a list of a few of the major assumptions that will likely change when actual information becomes known. One of the ones I'm particularly concerned about is number 7, the economy. I read yesterday we are in a recession formally now, and we just don't know what that's going to mean for our future funding from the state. So I anxiously await the governor's May revise for the budget proposal for 2020 and 2021. And so next steps, staff is working hard on creating our new 3-year LCAP plan and meeting with lots of stakeholders. We're building the 2021 budget now based on the assumptions in this multi-year projection. And we're also working on our P2ADA because we were told that P2 ended on February 29th.
Right.
So we'll know that soon. We'll be updating our estimates for actual revenues and expenditures for the hearing on the first meeting in June, along with the public hearing on the LCAP, and then board adoption on the second meeting in June. And so at this time, I ask you to approve the second interim and a positive certification, and understanding that the second interim will become the board adopted budget.
Thank you, Barbara. Board comments.
Given that everything's fluid and the COVID-19 part, with May revise slightly around the corner, do we have any inclination? Will the governor even give anything, or was so much chaos? Would they ever take I got no input? No idea?
I have heard nothing. I don't know if anyone else has heard anything.
I don't think they can. He's got to put out a budget.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I guess you could do a continuing resolution like Congress, but
given all the chaos, I
know, I get it. I just don't.
Well, right. My guess is there are a lot of people working on a revised budget.
For sure.
From what was planned.
For sure.
2 weeks
And not
ago.
revising in the right direction.
No. Yes. I mean, funding is going to go other places.
For sure.
So, yes.
I've never heard anything that they wouldn't update the budget and wouldn't do it.
I guess.
Because I also do think, frankly, it would be irresponsible, because if you fund it at the current level, it'd be incredibly wrong given what we know receipts are down, right? So that would be putting them in a much worse position. So it would shock me if they did that.
Right. Well, the only thing I wonder about, since they've suspended all legislative hearings, including, right?
Yeah.
Budget hearings,
Yeah.
et cetera, will they, like you say, do some kind of CR to move things down the road until things are more stable? I don't know.
And we, particularly paying attention to this new special education funding formula, which we, and how that will work through. And there was, there's legislators considering the governor's proposal, and other legislators' a proposal. So that those hearings have stopped. We were looking at that, and then the beyond what the governor proposes for next year in the COLA and others in the May revise, our other thing that we're concerned about is they typically, Department of Finance projects the COLA that we have to budget on for the next 2 years. And so while we hope the governor will keep us whole in the May revise, even with everything going on, that's our best hope. We also worry that they could downgrade the out years based on the worry of a recession, which means that we're really required to use those numbers in our planning. And so that could make out years look you know, worse. So there's a lot of factors that go in, not just the next year where the board has to adopt a budget for, but how we forecast those other 2 years, which we're required to get budgets approved by the county to make some certifications. So, you know, what we will see, and also the state does have a rainy day fund. What degree that will assist, we don't know. We hope it will some, but we just don't know the degree to what it will.
I've got a question on the cost of living adjustment. The COLA, for anybody watching who's not familiar with the phrase, the cost of living adjustment. So in May, we're going to get our final COLA, but is that the final projection for next year, or is that the final actual number for the year we're ending?
It's for 2021.
Okay, but it's going to be based, well, I'm making a statement, tell me if I'm wrong, but it's going to be based on the window of time we've just gone through?
Yes.
Okay, it's going to be based on measuring actual prices in the economy, right? Because it's actually coming from the federal measure, right?
Yes.
Okay, so do you know, sorry to put you on the spot, so do you know, does that match up with our school year? Well, what I'm trying to get at is the times we're going into right now, you know, on the one hand, hand sanitizers like gold. On the other hand, oil prices have plummeted like 40%.
Right.
So the next couple months, is that going to play a significant factor in the final COLA we get in May? Because it seems like there is going to be less inflation than we expected.
The cutoff period, I believe, is, if it's not already happened, it's in March. And so,
Okay.
The period that they include in coming up with the COLA, I think, is not going to include what's coming like in March, April, May. I think because they get my understanding, they get the last factor in March, and then we'll find out in April what the statutory COLA is. What the funded COLA is could be different.
Oh, right. Okay. But, sorry, can you just explain that?
Okay. So the local control funding formula is built on the COLA, but if they decide not to fully fund the local control funding formula, then it could be less. I don't know if that makes sense. But
Right. The COLA could be 2% or 3%, and then they could say, well, LCFF says we'll give you COLA, but we're only going to fund it at 90%
right.
of that 2% or that 3%.
Right. A couple years ago, we got the super COLA, so they gave us
Right.
more, but it could be different.
And not to get too covered, because then the maintenance factor would kick in, and we would still be building that for the out years, but it would take us years to get to that, as we found in the last.
Right, and they don't make up what you lose in those years.
Right,
They
exactly,
just get you back
exactly.
to a
Although they
certain
say
level.
they do, but yes,
Right.
exactly.
Okay. Well, I guess a lot of uncertainty, but we're going to find out in a month or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Or normally we would find out in a month or 6 weeks.
True,
Hopefully we'll still
true.
get those numbers on time.
The other factor I want to just bring up that we saw in the Great Recession, and hopefully this is not a Great Recession, is that the federal government and sometimes the state government would, and we appreciate it, apply measures to assist schools, the economy, that resulted in one-time funding that came in at unpredictable times in our normal budget cycle.
Right.
So we had cases where all of a sudden one-time money shows up and we were not able to, it would come like a month for the budget's due and there's no way we could spend it, so it looks like reserves went up, but in fact it was one-time money coming in, we had to book it, and then it goes into the next year when we make expenditures. So that is the other piece, as Barbara mentioned in her report, that our budget's built on assumptions but there are conditions that change that can make estimates or make those factors make it hard to predict to what the actual will occur. And so that's just another factor with all the legislation and talk being in Congress and in our own state legislature around that could put us in a little bit of a roller coaster ride on the making predictions that make sense now, but when you look back several years, they may seem, people wonder about that. So we don't know how that will impact things, but we absolutely are glad that we are posting all the documents. We want that transparency for people in the public to see how we're tracking, how we're reporting these, because we know that's important, and there's a lot of questions given the hard decisions the boards had to make, recently.
Other board member comments?
Yeah, just end it on a positive. So on slide 5, thank you very much for the reporting cycle and where things end up. I think it's a good just point of reference for everybody, the folks in the community, that even though we're at one point, it's a continuous loop and it always changes every time you have a new set of classrooms. So thank you for that. And if we can put that somewhere on our website, just as a point of reference, I think it helps out the general population.
Right.
Thank you.
So unfortunately, I'm not going to end on a good note. I appreciate the trying, though. I'm going to build a little bit off of what Eric was saying. I just do want to be crystal clear that this is a perfect storm coming to us, and we are in deep trouble. And every indication is we're going to hit a deep recession, given where the market is, and which is where we get the vast majority of our money in California. And it's hard to imagine any scenario where we will sustain or not be significantly lower come into next year. We already had to make budget cuts based on what we hoped would be an equal. If it goes under, it's much, much harder. And then the perfect storm to what Travis was talking about, that we have this less money at the exact same time we have less learning having gone on the year before. We have kids that have missed massive moments of time. So you have a child who's now a sophomore who's integrated 2 but missed 4 months of integrated 1. What do you do with that? How do you do that? How do you do that then when you have significantly less money in the system at the exact same time? So we are going to have some very hard conversations going forward. There is no good scenario where this ends well for us. And so we're going to have to really strive and sort of think very, very hard and be very purposeful about how we think about our spending, how we think about our programs, and how we think about making sure that we are as targeted and as effective as we can with what limited budget we're going to have. Okay, thank you. Actually, before I ask for a motion, is there public comment or staff comment on this? Okay, can I get a motion on the second interim report?
So moved.
Moved by Eric, seconded by
Second.
Derek. Ready, we get a roll call, please.
Camille Maben,
Yes.
Derek Counter,
Yes.
Eric Stevens,
Yes.
Rochelle Price,
Yes.
Rick Miller.
Yes. Okay, Bob, we're going to take us now to information item 10.1, a presentation on proposed meal price increase.
Yes. It's my pleasure to introduce again Charles, our Director of Nutrition Services, here to present our proposed meal price increase for effective next year.
Thank you, Barbara. President Miller, members of the board and Superintendent Stock, thank you once again for allowing me to speak in front of you this evening. This time I want to talk about a proposed paid meal price increase going effective for school year 2020 through 2021. Quick overview. These are the topics that I want to hit on this evening. At the end of the presentation, I'll field and answer questions, but at any point, if there's a question arise, please feel free to to ask, and I'll answer. Okay. Just starting off, let me just give you some quick facts about school lunch. So one of the things is the National School Lunch Program is for all students. So regardless of eligibility, income, things like that, a student is able to participate in the program. We follow the dietary guidelines, so our menus are constructed per those guidelines. They are also age-specific. Our menus are well-balanced. We offer a variety of colors, so fresh fruits and vegetables. The sodium is restricted. Dairy is still present, however, we offer them in a low-fat form and a fat-free form. All right. It includes whole grains, so most of our menus, 50% of the grains that are included in our menus are whole grain rich, which means, as you know, whole grains is an excellent source of fiber, which keeps students fuller longer throughout the day. And the last two bullet points here are the most important ones. So school meals are cost effective. Where else can you get a school lunch or lunch for $2.75? All the fruits and vegetables you can eat for $2.75 at the elementary level and $3.25 at the secondary level. And the most important factor about school lunch is it supports the academic process. So you heard the saying, a hungry student can't learn. Well, we play a very important role in that. So, all right. These next two slides, they just illustrate the guidelines that we follow when we construct our menu. So this slide is for lunch. The next slide is for breakfast. So when you look through here, you'll see that these requirements are very complex. They're very strict and they're very specific, and they limit the flexibilities that we have when we construct these menus. So slides 4 and 5 refer to lunch and the breakfast requirements that we have to do when we construct our menus. Okay, just kind of getting to the meat of the presentation here. I want to get into the increase in so we want to get into an increase in expenses and deficit spending. So this slide details, as you can see, the rise in our expenses here. So on the right side of the chart here, we have the food column and our labor and benefits column. And as you can see, since 2015-16, those numbers have been going up. It also shows a trend in deficit spending. We started doing deficit spending in 2018-19, and so far, per the second interim report, that trend is continuing. Okay. Factors for why our expenses are increasing is food costs rising, transportation costs rising, pension costs, pension and salary settlements, pension and benefits, equipment purchases, and then the fact that we get into the next slide is we're feeding more students as well too. So the next slide shows a history of lunches served. So it went all the way back to 2011, 2012, and so the column on the right side of the chart corresponds or correlates with the number of lunches that we serve for that entire school year. So in 2012-13 is when the Healthy Hungry Free Kids Act was implemented, and so that year there refers to the charts number 4 and 5 with the breakfast and lunch requirements. That's when those those requirements went into effect, was that year. In 2014-15 was the last year that we raised our prices here in Rocklin Unified. And so as you can see, we had a slight decrease, but as the years have been going on, we've been seeing a slight incline in the number of lunches per year. So as of February of this year, we were at 474,839 meals, and we were projected to do over 700,000 lunches this school year.
I'm surprised it's not more linear. It's interesting. What in the world happened in 11-12? So we just made the lunches healthy and people stopped eating
Well,
them?
in 11-12, like I said, is when so Michelle Obama
made them healthy, and so they're like, forget that. I'm going to Taco Bell. All right.
And so you saw, and a lot of districts across the nation saw a decrease in meal counts, because it was just like what happened was with the sodium restrictions and the whole grain requirement, vendors had to go back and reconstruct their formulas and things like that. They had to reformulate their recipes, and so it was just like you saw a lot of plate waste, a lot of things went in the trash, and so lunches kind of went down, but slowly but surely, as students started to get used to those requirements and things, you start to see them rise back up. All right. This slide here, I wanted to show and this kind of goes back to Member Stevens' question earlier, like as far as the number percentage of free and reduced lunches that are served here. So that's what this chart is exhibiting. So when we serve and claim our lunches and our breakfasts, we claim them by eligibility, which is free, reduced, and paid. And as you'll see a little later, there's a reimbursement rate that is associated with each category. So excuse me. As of February, so the 474,000 lunches that we served as of February, 34% of those lunches have been were eaten by free and reduced students. Okay. This chart here shows, or the next slide shows, the comparison of the federal reimbursement rates. So every year, USDA recognizes that our costs increase, so they actually raise the reimbursement rate a standard of 2 to 3% each year. But as you can see by the chart, if you go back to 2014-15, which is the last year that we raised our prices, there is a cumulative amount at lunch. There's a 44-cent difference between this year and 5 years ago for lunch, and then 27 cents at breakfast. So this is what this slide is illustrating here. So you can just see that even though as the reimbursement rates go up a little bit, it's not.
So can you, maybe your answer's later, but so dollar for every free lunch we serve, how much money comes out of our fund? Are we reimbursed fully for it? Because I see that it went, the difference between 14 and 20, but are we losing money in every free and every reduced? Or are we?
I'm not sure if I understand. That's for every meal free, and we'll get into that a little bit later in a couple of slides later. But
that's what I'm saying. Do we get full reimbursement from the federal government for every free meal we serve?
Correct.
Full reimbursement. And
Full
for every
reimbursement.
reduced meal, we get full reimbursement.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I'm not sure I was understanding your
No,
question.
we're good.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so here, this slide here, we did a survey of neighboring districts within the area, and as you can see here by the chart, when we look at our elementary breakfast meal price, we are in the top echelon or whatnot, or the top range. When we look at the secondary breakfast meal price, we are right in the middle. However, when you look at the paid lunches, both elementary, the paid meal price for elementary for both lunch, the paid meal price, excuse me, for lunch in elementary and secondary, you can see that we are comparably lower than our neighbors.
Fair.
Oh, and let me back up. And so one addendum here to add is I also asked each district where they planning a meal price for next school year. As of right now, everybody had responded no, but that could change. So we don't know, just to put that out there. So now I want to get back, and this is kind of where President Miller, you were kind of asking. So this is the revenue per meal comparison here. So there are three factors when we get our reimbursements or for revenue for our lunch, breakfast and lunches. So the first one is, the first component, let's say component. So the first component would be our federal reimbursement. So for every free lunch that we serve, we get $3.48 from the federal government. Receive 24 cents, roughly 24 cents from the state. We collect no monies from the students, so in essence, we receive $3.72 per free lunch. Reduced price, you can see here, we collect $3.08. We receive 24 cents from the state. We receive 40 cents from the student. In essence, we get $3.72. Now, when you look at the paid elementary price and the paid secondary price, you can see there's a big discrepancy there. So what we have here is an issue of subsidizing. So Rocklin Unified, we're 18-19% free and reduced. So we have those 18% is subsidizing the other 81-82%. Okay.
The state pays for.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
The state doesn't reimburse for any.
No, the state does not reimburse for any paid meals. They just free and reduce.
Okay.
So that being said, we propose as a staff that would be no meal price breakfast increase, or did I say that backwards? Excuse me. There will be no meal price increase proposed for breakfast at this time. However, we would recommend or propose that for each elementary lunch be raised by a quarter effective January 1st, 2020 from $2.75 to $3. And the secondary lunch meals increased a quarter effective July 20th from $3.25 to $3.50. This proposal does not affect reduced price students at all. If you go back to the chart on page 11, as you can see, the revenue that we receive from a free lunch is $372, and the revenue that we receive from a reduced price lunch is also $372. So the 40 cents at lunch is the maximum amount that we can charge per USDA for a reduced student. So 40 cents at lunch is the maximum amount we can charge. 30 cents at breakfast is the maximum amount that we can charge. So this does not affect reduced price students. It's only the paid meal price. Okay, and then this one here hopefully will further illustrate why we need to raise the meal price. So the USDA came up with this tool which is called the Paid Lunch Equity Requirement, and this tool is used to ensure that the Nutrition Services fund balances receive sufficient funds from paid lunches. So as we can see from the chart here, you know, we 372, so we're like 58 cents less in the elementary level and about 8 cents per lunch at the secondary level. So they came up with this tool, so to kind of stumbling here, but let me go back. So they came up with this tool. So let me explain how this tool works. So if you look at the top part of where under USDA requirement, they have what's called a weighted average price. So a lot of districts tend to use pricing structure. So between your elementary and your high school or secondary levels. So Rocklin is no different there. So hence $275 for elementary, $325 for secondary. And so to get that weighted average price, we have to take the number of paid lunches for a specific month, a specific given month, and divide it into that revenue that was received. So as you look at the top part of the chart there, for 2019-20, the weighted average price minimum is $3 even. So what we did was we took the paid lunches from October of last year, 2019, and as you can see here from the chart on the left-hand side, so between elementary and secondary, we had 62,429 lunches. When you cost out or associate the meal price, the paid meal price with it, the $275 and the $3.25, when you do the math, you end up with $183,647.25. When you divide that by the total number of meals, you get a weighted average price of $2.94. And so as you can see, that is well below what the minimum average that USDA had that they require. When you look at the right side of the chart here with the same number of meals in the proposed meal price, and you see the $199, and you divide the same number of lunches, we get a weighted average price of $3.19, which is well above the USDA requirement for this school year. Okay, so the weighted average price they tend to kind of go up about 8 cents a year. And so 2009, even though it's not set in stone, but the projected weighted average price for 2020, 2020-21 is $3.09. So if we raise our prices a quarter, we would have a weighted average price of 3.19. We shouldn't need to raise our prices for another 2, 3, 4 years. Okay. So kind of getting into options to maintain fiscal solvency. First one is to increase our paid meal prices to exceed to meet or exceed the USDA requirement. 2 is to contribute to the, contribute financial support to the cafeteria fund from a non-federal source, i.e. the general fund, to maintain solvency. So as you saw from the chart on page 6, you know, we are projected to deficit spend. And so the district would contribute about 2021-22, excuse me. If the price increase is not approved, Rocklin Unified would have to submit a paid lunch equity waiver to CDE. And this waiver basically allows the district to subsidize the paid meals with the free and reduced meals. And then it also says that the district agrees to fund the fund balance if we reach a zero or negative balance. And then, so we must show a positive, and then also with the waiver, we must show a positive balance as of the end of last year. So December 31st of 2019, we would have to show proof that we had a positive fund balance. So going into this school year, we had to file a waiver with the state, and we had to show that we had a positive fund balance as of 12/31/18, and that waiver was approved for this year. All right. And so the next steps, so April 1st, 2020, we will request a board approval to increase the lunch meal price by 25 cents effective July 1st, 2020. And then we will continue to communicate with families. And that communication includes the application form, the instructions on how to complete that form, meal pricing, how and where to complete the application online payment process, and just contact information. So this is regular things that we have to do on a year-to-year basis. So we have to, every year we're mandated by USDA to inform our families by providing letters to the household and things of that nature. So at this point, I'd like to conclude my presentation and entertain any questions that you may have at this time.
Great, thanks, Troy, I appreciate it. So we'll open it to board comments. Let me just say a couple things real quick before we open. I just want to remind folks that we are not voting on this tonight. This is just informational, and we will bring this back to our next board meeting. I also do want to just let folks know, we said our April 1 board meeting, given the current virus, given what's going on, we're reassessing whether that meeting is critical. We may end up not having that meeting and having another meeting following that. So I don't know when this will come back, but what I can say is it will come back at our next regularly scheduled board meeting. So just a heads up for that. So with that, I'm open to any board member questions.
Yes.
As with anything, when the price goes up, you sometimes see a loss in,
Correct.
you know, people who would take advantage of that. So is there any, I don't know how you calculate that or how you think about that, but I suspect, you know, as prices go up, people will think about,
Correct.
you know,
Yeah.
can we afford the extra quarter or whatever? And that's more of a comment, I guess, than a question, but